Welcome back. Over the last few weeks, we've been exploring teaching strategies that can be used to enhance learning. Active learning strategies like peer instruction and problem-based learning, as well as frameworks for thinking about how to implement these strategies like the flipped classroom. Hopefully, you've been thinking about how well these teaching strategies will work in your classroom, because that's the start of a really good teaching as research project.
Derek, I noticed that you asked how well do they work. Let's unpack that a little bit. It's time to flesh out your questions and make them a bit more specific. So when I did my first TAR project, I started out with something rather vague that was kind of like what you said. Yeah. So I asked, will my students learn better if they use an online tool to solve problems? But obviously that's not narrow enough. So I needed to bring it back to the context of my classroom and talk about the particular course content. So what kind of problems are my students being asked to solve? What are my students' backgrounds? Are they engineers or are they chemists or are they biologists? And then I had to think more concretely about what I wanted my students to be able to do after the intervention or whatever strategy I implement. And so I had to write very concrete, clear learning objectives using Bloom's taxonomy. Then to get at this does it work part of the question, I had to define what measurements I was going to make and what threshold I was going to set to answer that question of does it work. Because obviously does it work means different things to different people depending on how you define those. So we're going to be thinking quite a bit about that in this module.
So this week's module is brought to you by Bennett Goldberg of Boston University and Rick Campa from Michigan State University. This is our kind of part 2 of the Teaching as Research module sequence. And they're going to walk you through this process to help you take what may be a somewhat vague question and help you refine it by thinking more concretely about your learning objectives, by exploring assessments and measurements that will help you know if you've reached those objectives, and connecting that to the teaching strategies that you're interested in trying out. Now, if you're like me, you may have gotten interested originally because of a particular teaching strategy, right? That's kind of what got you interested to begin with. But you may need to take a few steps back and think about those learning objectives and about those assessments. This is all part of the backwards design process we talked a lot about in the previous course, focusing on learning objectives and then assessments and then thinking about teaching strategies. So this week's module will kind of walk you through that process, and hopefully by the end of it, you'll have a really nicely designed teaching as research project that you can use to figure out how well these teaching strategies work in your classroom.